I was thinking the other day how you determine this concept of value. So my mother-in-law is looking at getting a new phone, and the iPhones, even the old ones, are still quite expensive, 600 plus. But if you think about it, you're like, well, you spend so much time on this thing, right? On your phone. It takes up so many of your hours a day. Isn't it better to get yourself a nice, good one? And I guess if you extend that, right? If we spend a lot of time in something, we sort of value it more, right? Well, we're willing to pay more money for it. So that's why you pay much more for a 3 hour meal at a Michelin-starred restaurant than for a, grab and go. Or that's why you pay more for a car because you spend so much time commuting. Want to have a nice vehicle to do that in. Or a house. But then if you start thinking even deeper, it sort of all ends up falling apart. So your house could be nice, but it depends more on the location how expensive it is. So if you have a nice house in the middle of nowhere, is it less enjoyable? Less valuable? Then why is it cheaper? Or when you travel, why is a 5 star hotel in Vietnam, which is better than most 5 star hotels in the US, cheaper? And you say, well, people don't make as much, blah, it's all relative. Well, the value you're saying is based on nothing. It's all relative, right? And translating over into how we think about meaningful things in the medical world. See, me and many other people who work in a hospital, we think of hospital duty as being more important than clinic duty. Because in a hospital, we're dealing with saving lives, real important things, loss of limb, shall we say, real serious injury that affects the rest of your life. Whereas in a clinic, you deal with sort of silly stuff. Oh, my arm hurts. Oh, my back hurts. It doesn't really matter. But I got to thinking, well, is it also relative? Because an 80-year-old, right? You help them, they only have a few years left to live, right? So you may have saved their lives, but you only saved a few years. Whereas if it's somebody who's, say, 40 and they have some back pain and you could fix that, or they have a bad hip, you could fix that, right? Even though it's not life-threatening, say they have 40 more years, you're helping them enjoy a whole another 40 years, which you didn't in the first place. And even if the worth is not the same, right? Life and death, say that's worth 1 point. And being able to walk well, that's worth quarter of a point, tenth of a point. 40 years is much better than 4 years, and it's going to be a lot better in the overall scheme of things, right? Because I think we sort of view things sort of black and white. Why is it that older people get more stuff done? Because we think that, well, they're more seriously affected. And yes, they are. But younger people are more seriously affected by the time of their illness, by how long they have to go through all this stuff. So maybe we should do more for younger people, even though it's not as quote unquote life-threatening, not as morbid, right? Because I always wonder about this idea of fairness. So you say old people, right? They deserve to have more. Well, why? Because they're older? Do you ever make the argument that young people deserve to have more because they're younger? Oh no, they didn't pay into them. They didn't pay their dues, right? But that's not how we make decisions. A kid who has leukemia will be treated. Did the kid pay any dues? But going back to this idea of value, I don't know. I don't think there is a way to determine value. It's all subjective, relative. You think of it what you do. And some people may have a system of deciding whether or not a phone and spending $1,000 on a phone is a wiser decision than spending $1,000 on a hotel versus spending $1,000 more on getting a nicer car and some options. But that's the thing about value. There's no objective measurements. People may have things they think determine value, this or that, but there's always going to be contradictions to their system. Value just is what you think it is. Nothing less, nothing more.